Hello everyone, and welcome to our watercolor project here on Patreon. I'm really excited about this one. It's something that I love to do. I do a lot of landscape work. Yes, we're going to do a landscape. And we're going to do it in 3 different lessons. So this week we're going to start with the sky, because skies are really, really important, and there are many ways to go about them. And I want to give you some techniques and tools, some foundational work in creating beautiful skies so that you can practice those for the next couple of weeks. And then when we're ready to begin, you can choose the kind of sky that you like best. And you'll feel more confident about them, and you'll be able to create a beautiful sky when we begin the actual project. So before we begin, I want to just go over a few supplies. I have a glass of water over here. I have my split primary palette that I just refreshed with some new pigment on my little white salad plate. You can also use a dinner plate, but I really like white. I get them at the dollar store. I have a stack of them in my studio. They're really handy because I can leave my paints right on here and just clean up my mixing area and add more paint when I need to. So I have my split primary palette. If you need to refresh on that, there is a video. If you scroll down, there's a video on the split primary palette. Okay? And there's also there are also videos on YouTube. If you have any questions about it, just let me know. But basically we want a warm and a cool each of yellow, red, and blue. So that makes it our split primaries. They're split into warm and cool. Okay? I also have a roll of paper towels to wipe my brush on, and that's just over here to the side. I'm left-handed, so everything's on my left. If you're right-handed, you're going to put everything on your right, okay? I have a size 0 squirrel mop. It's a pointed round watercolor brush that's very absorbent, goes to a nice fine point, holds a lot of paint. If you don't have a squirrel mop, you could use a pointed round or a round watercolor brush in about a size 8 or even a 10. That would be perfect for a landscape, okay? So I have that. I have a number 2 pencil in case I need it. I also have a mixed media sketchbook for practice, okay? This is not my good watercolor paper. This is practice paper, so I can do a lot of skies and try them. A note to you is that any of your practice paper for watercolor will be fine, okay? So you don't want to use your best, you want to use your student grade paper for these exercises. This is just a spiral bound mixed media sketchbook from 2 Rivers paper. But there are many, many good ones to try. And I've just drawn 2 kind of rectangles on here, but who knows, we'll do all sorts of things. But I also want to show you this. This is a roll of paper towels that I have pressed down to make it flat, okay? This is a great temporary easel. We don't all have table easels, and to be quite honest with you, I most often use this roll of paper towels. I like it because it's nice and firm. My paper sits on it really nicely, and it's not expensive, and it just works. I like the angle that it gives me. So we're putting our paper at an angle because we want gravity to work with us, okay? We want gravity to work with us. We can do them flat, and maybe I'll do one flat just to show you, but I highly recommend trying a roll of paper towels just to lift your paper up at an angle, all right? So we're going to get started with mixing up some sky colors. And that is so up to you. You know, the landscapes that you make will have a certain mood, an atmosphere, a temperature, like in a place. So if you're painting a Florida sky over the ocean, it's going to be very different than my moody November steely blue sky here over the fields where I live in Western New York. So that's something that you yourself need to pay attention to. What kind of skies touch your heart? What kind of skies do you want to portray in your landscapes? The sky sets the mood, okay? So I'm going to show you a few different ways to approach it. And the first thing we're going to do is mix up some color. So If you want a bright blue sky on a hot summer day, that's fine. And you can just use a warm French ultramarine blue and that's it. You could do that if you wanted to, and I highly recommend trying it to see what you like. But typically I like my skies a little bit more muted, okay, more realistic looking. Right now I'm looking at my studio window and the sky is a very soft gray blue. It's very, very soft and subtle. It's sort of an overcast day. So let's say I want to make a gray blue. I'm going to start with my warm French ultramarine blue and make a nice puddle of it on my palette. Okay, and I'm going to move this over a little bit so you can see more of my palette. So I've got some French ultramarine blue on my palette, okay, and that's a really vibrant, kind of cool, warm blue. It leans toward purple, okay. So to gray it out a bit, I think about my color wheel and what is across from blue on my color wheel, and that is orange. So I can just take a tiny, tiny touch of my warm red and mix it into my blue, and it's going to gray it out for me, okay? To make it even more gray and less of a dusty violet, I can take a tiny, tiny touch of warm yellow, really tiny, just a little touch, and mix it in, and it becomes more gray. So let's see what this color looks like on our paper. So see, it's just a really soft, subtle gray. Okay, kind of a pearly gray. And it's almost exactly what the sky looks like outside my window right now. But let's say we want a little more color, okay? So I'm going to go back to my warm blue and mix it in. And I can put even less of my warm red, just a tiny pinprick of color. A little bit is all you need to shift the color, and all that did was mute out my blue just a little bit so it's not so vibrant. If it's not enough, I can take another pinprick, mix it in, and it grays it out even more, but it's still blue, okay? So let's say we want a more like a turquoisey sky like you would see in Santa Fe, you know, out west, that beautiful cerulean blue sky. Well, I can start with my cool blue, which is phthalo blue, which is more of a turquoise blue. See the difference in the two? This is a cooler blue. It leans toward green, all right, turquoise, cyan. So I can take that, and I can also add just a little touch of my warm red, just a tiny little touch of my warm red, and that will gray that out a little bit, just soften it. So if I swatch that out underneath this top blue, I get a really soft kind of that cerulean sky blue, all right? So let's say we want that a little stronger, a little bit more of my cool blue, so it's nice and bright on my palette. And then another little touch of warm red, and it grays it out a little bit. It makes it so it's not so tropical looking, you know? A little bit more. See what that does? So if I put that down, it's a very beautiful sky blue. Okay? So the first thing you're going to do is practice mixing different blues. All right? And I'm going to turn my paper this way now so you can see this side. You're going to practice mixing different blues. What if I want sort of a stormy greenish gray sky? I can take my warm blue, mix in a touch of warm yellow to sort of green it up a little bit more. So I kind of have this kind of murky green, okay? And then add a little touch of warm red to that. And I get this sort of stormy sky color, all right? And what's wonderful about when you mix these colors and you're using French ultramarine blue, which remember is a granulating pigment, if I put water back into the sky, okay, it's going to give me beautiful separation, all right? And the colors you can achieve are just magnificent. Some of my very favorite skies that were ever painted were painted by Andrew Wyeth. And if you look at Andrew Wyeth's paintings, you'll notice that he never painted a blue sky. They were usually this sort of murky gray-green color. They're very, very effective with the mood, the sort of quiet mood of his landscapes. All right? So you can see as this is starting to dry, I'm getting some of the separation where you can see the blue and the yellow. It's just absolutely gorgeous. It gives a great effect. So those are some ideas for sky colors. I want you to practice, and I want you to mix all sorts of different sky colors, okay? So right now, I'm gonna clean my palette off. And this is what I love about these plates. I can just take a little bit of water on a paper towel and just wipe up what I've got and start fresh. I am not super, ever super worried about the state of my palette. It's just something I don't worry about. So don't worry about just wiping it off. Even if there's a little residue there, it will not affect your painting, okay? All right, I'm gonna clean my brush really well. And I think I'm gonna start with this sort of greenish gray sky. And I'm gonna flip to a new page. And I have with me a little bit of toilet paper, to be honest. You can also use Kleenex. I just don't have any here. Kleenex works great. But I just want a little wad of clean paper, either toilet paper or Kleenex. Paper towels tend to be textured, and so they'll leave a texture on your paper. So I like to use something that's a little smoother. All right, so I'm gonna go back and I'm gonna mix up some of that sort of gray-green sky. So remember, I'll start with my French ultramarine, get a nice juicy puddle on my palette. And when you're going between blues and yellows, make sure you clean your brush really well. I'm gonna grab some of that warm yellow to green it up. Okay. And a touch of my warm red, just to mute it a little bit more. All right? So we're gonna start pretty small. And what I'm gonna do is, with wet paint on dry paper, I'm gonna start making just some diagonal, just brush strokes on my sky. I might make it a little heavier on top, but you see how I'm going diagonally? This gives our sky movement. All right? I'm gonna clean my brush, and I'm gonna go back, and just using clean water, I'm gonna push the paint around a little bit and let it mix and mingle and just sort of run down the page. Okay, when I get to the edges, I can sort of square them off, and we'll tape our paper when we start our landscape. Okay, so you see how it's running down. I can pick up more of the paint, drop it in a little bit up top. Drop a little bit underneath where I see the whitest areas, just dropping in a little bit more here and there. This color is pretty light, but it's rich. Okay? Then as the paint flows down, it's going to pool here at the horizon line. And I just want to take a clean dry brush and just sweep it across to pick up that bead of paint as it flows down. But the flowing matters, because the flowing gives us sort of this dreamy, expressive look and some movement in the sky. And our diagonal lines matter because it gives it so it's just not this back and forth look. Okay? So I don't know if you can see this very well, but I'm going to hold it up for you. Do you see how it's separating into blue and yellow and a little green? It's really, really beautiful. This is a super simple way to make a gorgeous atmospheric sky. Okay, so that was our gray-green with wet paint on dry paper, and then just pushing a wet brush with clean water through the clouds and then dropping in a little bit more. As the paint flows down, I took a clean dry brush and just swiped it across the bottom to pick up. All right, so that is one kind of sky. I'm going to turn it this way. And I'm always checking to make sure you can see here, and I think it's pretty good. So now let's say we want a blue sky day with big white fluffy clouds. So I'm going to start with my French ultramarine blue, get a good deal of it on my palette, nice and juicy. Remember, we want it to move around on the palette really freely. Okay? And then I'll rinse my brush, dry it off a little bit, and I'm just going to pick up the smallest amount of my warm red and add it in, just to sort of gray it out a little bit. I personally don't ever use just a straight blue, okay? You can certainly try it if you want to. So this time, we're going to start swiping our paint in, and just see how I'm sort of using my brush in a circular motion and just sort of scrubbing it on the paper, all right? So it's wild, it's not going back and forth. And these little white spots that I left are going to be clouds. And I can take some water and just push it in to the cloud areas, all right? Clean water, I'm just pushing it in where I see white space. This is going to give my clouds really soft, hazy edges, just along the top. Then I'm going to take my tissue and I'm going to ball it up, and I'm going to just touch here and there where I see the white and sort of lift up more of that paint. So now I have more white space showing. Take my clean water again, and then again, just push at the edges. Now, the most successful skies are very random, okay? They're not planned, they're just done really loose and expressively, and you're not trying to make the perfect cloud. The more random we are, the more realistic our skies appear, okay? So you can see as this starts to dry, it looks like a blue sky with just white fluffy clouds in it. I can use my tissue as often as I need to. So if I want to lift out a really strong cloud like right here, I can take the tip of my tissue and just press it in, just sort of randomly, and really lift out a lot of white, okay? I can leave a hard edge at the top, all right? But then at the bottom, I'm going to gray this out a little bit more. And I'm going to drop some of that more gray color, even sort of purpley gray, at the bottom of my clouds. Just random at the bottom of my clouds. Just drop it in, clean my brush, and then just sort of drop more water in and soften. Remember that our watercolor dries a lot lighter than it looks when it's wet, okay? So see, I'm just pushing clean water. And this takes some practice, and that's why I want you to practice this before we begin our landscapes. So I'm just pushing the water in just to soften it, and then as it flows down, clean dry brush, swipe it across to pick up any extra. So now I have a more dimensional look. I've got some shadow underneath the cloud. I can drop a little more in here and there while it's wet. As soon as it starts to dry, you want to stop. Just giving it a little more dimension here and there by dropping in more of the grayed out color. So you see, I'm not being precious with it. I'm not planning it out. I'm being very free and random. And that is what gives us the most expressive, beautiful skies that we see in the watercolors that we love. Okay? This is how I do my skies almost every single time. All right? All the ways that I'm showing you. It just depends on the mood. So this one has more of a white, fluffy cloud appearance. Okay? You could go back when this dries. All right, I don't think it's quite dry yet, but I'll show you anyways. And you could take more of your French ultramarine blue, gray it out just a touch, and along the tops of the clouds I can go in, and I can be very random with the tip of my brush and add in some of that blue paint. rinse my brush, dry it off, and then once again, I'm just lightly softening that edge by pushing water into it and letting the paint spread a little bit. But you see how what this did is it gave me a harder edge at the edge of that cloud. So it's just more of a dramatic look, okay? So that is another technique that you can try. And see what that happened when that just ran down. I would leave that. Okay, I think it's beautiful. I want my skies to look very expressive and not planned. I want them to look just crazy. I want all those textures and colors to bleed and separate and mix and mingle. Okay, so I would let that happen. All right, so that is another technique you can do. You can go back on top of the clouds and drop in more color. And I really recommend that you watch this video twice and then rewind to watch again if you need to. Okay, and just practice it. Get out some paper and make as many skies as you can. All right, so there are two more. Now another one that I like to make is called just a palette sky. So whatever is on my palette, I just sort of mix it together, and almost always you're going to get some kind of gray when you just mix whatever's left over on your palette. And I'll start that way when I start a landscape, because there's something really beautiful about just mixing these random colors on your palette and getting another color. So I'm going to start by just filling in, and let's do this one flat. Let's see if you can see. Okay, let's do this one flat. So I'm going to start by just filling in my sky, letting my brush just sort of flow across the paper, and just taking my sky from the top back and forth all the way down to the horizon line that we'll have on our landscape. And that's where the trees would begin. Okay, so I've got this lovely kind of muted gray. Then I'm going to go back in. I'm going to take some blue. Just mix it into that gray. And maybe drop some blue in one corner. Just dropping it with the tip of my brush on the wet paint that's already there. Maybe a little bit more down here. Notice I'm never going just back and forth. I'm giving random, I'm very random. I'm just dropping it in sort of a horizontal line. Okay? And then maybe I'll take a little bit of cool red and mix it into my blue. Again, this is very intuitive. So I'm taking some of my other color with some cool blue, and I'll drop some of that in over here. Okay? And then I'm going to take some warm yellow and mix it over here and drop some of that in, maybe just at the tops of my clouds, because sometimes clouds have a little yellow. So just drop it in where you see the top of a cloud, just to give it a little bit of warmth. Do you see how I'm mixing it all into the palette, whatever's there? And then maybe I'll take a little more cool red, get something that's sort of a red violet, and just start dropping it in down here. And see, I'm just randomly using the tip of my brush and dropping in this color. And if it starts to dry, all right, and you see these kind of stripy lines that aren't blending in, clean wet brush and just soften, just drop in some water so it softens a little bit. And then maybe at the very bottom, I'll take a little more of my blue and a little more of my warm yellow. Whoops, that was a lot of warm yellow, so we don't want that. So a little more blue. And I'm just looking for a gray color for the bottom, a grayish blue, maybe some cool red. That's pretty. And then I'll go underneath where I put this red and just drop in a little bit here and there. And maybe a little bit, just dot it here and there with this darker gray just to give a little bit more dimension. But see how random? Tip of my brush, just sort of dropping it in. And then when I get all the way down to the horizon line, clean my brush, dry it off, and then I just smooth that clean, dry brush across and just soften the bottom of the sky. So what will likely happen when you're painting a landscape is you'll draw a very simple drawing, and you'll start with your sky, and you'll bring your sky all the way to the horizon line, and then we'll work the foreground, okay, to let this dry for just a moment, and then we'll go back and we'll put our horizon line in. So usually that will be some kind of tree line, okay, and that's what we're going to do anyways. We're going to do a landscape with trees, and so I'll go back in and I'll drop in my trees right on top of this. So I'll just show you what that looks like. So I'm going to mix up sort of a brown. Remember in our color charts, cool blue and a little warm red is going to make sort of a grayish brown. And I'll just go right in and start dropping in my trees. And this is just the first layer. Okay, so you don't need to practice this right now, but I just want to show you how that works. So some of your sky will get covered up by your tree line. Okay? So what you've accomplished with this palette sky is this dreamy, almost opalescent looking sky. And I'll take a good picture of this to drop into the video, but maybe you can see that. It's really, really lovely. I'll take a really good picture of this one. And so I call this my palette sky. I start with what's on my palette and I just start adding other colors in. And this takes practice, okay? So you're gonna do a few of these and see how your colors react, see how quickly you need to work. I can't do those things for you. That is what we have to spend time doing, so we get accustomed to the way that paint reacts on paper. There is a beautiful spontaneity to this, and there's always that element of surprise with watercolor, okay? And we don't want to lose that. But by practicing it, we know a little bit more what to expect as far as timing and how paint reacts when you drop it in, and how paints react when you mix them together. Those are the things we learn with practice. Every sky is going to be different. Every one of my skies, I don't plan them, okay? I plan a mood, all right? I know that I don't want bright, I want muted or something like that, but it's a very random process. It's very intuitive. And the only way we get better at that is by actually showing up to do them. So that is your homework for the next 2 weeks before we begin our actual landscape. I want you to try all of these different skies. Watch this video again. Rewind if you need to. That's the blessing of videos. You can rewind and watch as many times as you need to, okay? And then get out a sketchbook, get out your paints, and mix some different colors and try these different kinds of skies. See which ones feel the best to you, all right? And you may discover something totally unique to you, all right? So you never know, but you have to put the time into practice, all right? All right, everybody, if you have any questions, please ask me. I love to read your questions. I love responding, and I'm happy to help in any way that I can. And you can upload from your desktop computer. You can upload photos into the community section if you want to show us your work, and then we can all comment and encourage you, and you can ask questions there too. Okay, I hope you're having a great day. This is the first part of a 3-part watercolor project, all right? So in 2 weeks, on a Wednesday, the day before, I will upload a reference photo so you can print that out if you want to. And then we'll begin with a simple drawing and get our basic layers into our landscape. Okay? Hope you're having a great day. Thank you so much. Take care.